I have been on an incredible run of really great nun movies recently. That streak inevitably had to end at some point. Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Hammer reviews in my Hammer playlist, and there will be spoilers today for To the Devil a Daughter. So I feel very sad right now because this is my final Hammer review before I move on to Amicus, and I really wish I'd made Demons of the Mind my final review and just not done this one, because it's really not a good film. It's about an ex-priest who starts his own evil cult. They all worship some fictitious god called AstraZeneca or AstroTurf, something like that, Azarenka. I don't know, and I don't need to remember the name anyway, because I'm never going to see this particular god in any other film apart from this one. I think the cult's long-term goal is to create some kind of Damien-type figure. Maybe they want the god to go into the child or something. Maybe, I don't know. But they can't complete the ritual until they get hold of one particular 18-year-old nun who, throughout this story, just happens to be hanging out with the good guys. So there's a little bit of a tug of war going on here. If you've ever seen the film Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, picture that scene where the two mine carts are going down the rails and each side is pulling on short round for all they're worth. This film is basically that, with the nun square in the middle. It was directed by the same guy who did Demons of the Mind, the last film that I covered, but I want to focus less on him and more on the writer of this, Dennis Wheatley, who also did The Devil Rides Out, a very similar film to this in terms of plot, but The Devil Rides Out is way, way better. It just grabs you better from the off. This is like the poorer cousin of The Devil Rides Out. And the first problem with it, if we're going to start from the beginning, is just how it opens. I mean, I didn't have a clue what was going on in this film for a long, long time. Like, it starts off and then the priest is mulling around doing something. We cut to somebody in a bookstore. We cut to the nun taking a flight somewhere. There's people just doing things in different places, and I've no idea how it all connects. None of it's very interesting. At the first point of this film that I realised anything of what was going on, I paused it, checked the time, and 35 minutes had gone by. 35 minutes for me to realise anything about what was going on in this film. Way too much time to get going. I don't mind a bit of faff for 10 or 15 minutes, but by the 35-minute mark, I should really be into the movie, not still waiting to find out what the plot's about. Because I had nothing, I didn't know anything about this coming in. I didn't read the back of the box or anything like that. I figured, well, you know, it's another Hammer film. Let's just get it on. I'm sure the plot will reveal itself. Well, it didn't for a long time. It's been cast very well. There are a number of recognisable actors in this. Christopher Lee plays the evil priest, but he's a very one-dimensional character. And if I'm being honest with myself, if Lee wasn't playing this part, I'd probably think it was a really poor villain. In fact, I still do think it's a poor villain. Screw it. We've also got Natasha Kinski, who I vaguely remember from a lot of 80s, 90s films. This was one of her earliest roles, but she's playing an absolute non-entity of a character. She is the nun, but having only seen the film last night, I can't think of anything notable apart from the fact that she wears a nun habit. I mean, there's just nothing there. She's a blank slate. All the characters in this film are like that. They're all just pawns on a chessboard. They're not real people. It reminds me of watching Satanic Rites of Dracula. That film was also just mainly a bunch of pawns on a chessboard killing each other, and I couldn't get any feeling for any of the characters, but at least Satanic Rites of Dracula was sort of fun in places. It was watchable. This film can't even boast that. In the cast, we've also got Denholm Elliott, who played Marcus Brody, of course, in the Indiana Jones films. I always enjoy seeing him pop up in various old movies. He's a fun actor to watch, but he's playing an absolute wuss of a character here. This character that he's playing is he makes Marcus Brody look like Indiana Jones. He's just, again, not even worth talking about. And then we come to Honor Blackman, somebody who I will cherish and respect until the day I die because of Pussy Galore in Goldfinger. But I don't even know what this character that she's playing is meant to be. She just seems to have nothing to do with the plot. She's in a lot of scenes on Honor Blackman here, but she's always on the periphery. She's just never really... She's never got anything to do with the main beat of the story. It's like Honor Blackman just turned up to the wrong set, and just after they shoot her away, Somebody turned to someone else and went, no, that's Honor Blackman, get her back, will give us something to do. And so that's what they did. They just dumped her in some scenes of absolutely no relevance, and then after about an hour she dies. It's weird. There's nothing in this film that's scary or creepy. Most of the horror is just kind of icky. One of the main beats is that the cult are getting its own members pregnant, but then when it comes time for them to give birth, they're tying the women's legs together in order to make childbirth really difficult and painful. And I guess my first thought was, why? They want these kids to be born, surely, so why set up a situation where conceivably both mother and child could die? Because that's what seriously could happen if you do something like this. This type of horror, to me, it just feels more fitting for something like Saw or Hostel, putting people into situations where they've got like a few minutes to try and get out with some chains or something. What are you going to pick? Your child or your life? You've got 3 minutes to decide, that kind of thing. Like, I just don't get why you would chain the legs together here. It's just mystifying to me. Even worse, in my situation, my wife was sat in the room while I was watching this, and as soon as I saw what they were doing with the legs being tied together, I thought, oh no, why did I watch this tonight while she sat here? She was sat there like reading a book on her phone, and as it happened, she ended up leaving the room before the real nasty stuff started. But even so, this whole idea, this whole plot point, it really not for me. There's also a flashback in this to some kind of orgy where crazy things are happening. There's like a gold statue making love to a woman, and Christopher Lee's raping someone, and all the other cult members are at it. It's just really bizarre. We're only a few pints of blood away here from this basically being the missing footage from Event Horizon. In fact, somebody call up Paul W. Anderson and tell him we found his missing footage. It just ended up in the wrong Blu-ray. It ended up in To the Devil a Daughter. But I just didn't like the scene. And if we cut forward to the ending, I think the ending might be the worst thing of all in this film. It's like it was written by an 11-year-old child. Like, Christopher Lee is stood in like a magic circle, and he tells the good guy, who's this like old novelist, that he can't go in the magic circle because, well, he just can't. But then the old guy goes in the magic circle anyway, throws a rock at Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee disappears to never come back again, a bit like the villain in Halloween 3, I guess. And then the screen goes pink and green. I don't know what's happening, but when it's all over, the good guys have won. The old guy is able to walk off with Natasha Kinski. So, yay, score one for the home team, I guess. My music teacher said to me once, if you fall too far behind in the rhythm, don't try and catch up, just exit the rhythm and then rejoin it at the point where you're supposed to be. This film tries to catch up in the rhythm, and it just results in a complete mess towards the end of the film. Too many concepts and ideas coming at you at once. This is the problem with the first 35 minutes being so barren and just not taking the time to set up concepts for later. It just means that the film's in a bit of a sticky patch past a point, because it's got so many important plot details to communicate to you, but it doesn't know how to do that, and there's so many of them, it's just got no chance. Like, if you look into the plot summary on Wiki for this film, just read the final 5 paragraphs. It will give you a migraine. Like, I was reading this stuff thinking, oh, that's what it was going for. Oh, really? Oh, right. And I was also thinking, who actually wrote this plot summary? Did they get this information just from watching the film? Because I find that really hard to believe. Like, half the stuff in this plot summary I did not notice when I was watching the film. I certainly didn't comprehend it or understand it. It's just really odd. Sometimes I'll watch a movie, and even though I've really enjoyed it, I won't have fully understood everything about the story, and then I'll do some reading on the internet, and then I'll go back and watch the film a second time and have a really rich experience where, it's almost like watching it anew. But I've just got no interest in having that kind of relationship with this film. I can't see myself going back to it. I'm going to try and think of some positives just for the sake of balance, but all I can think of really is that the middle portion of the plot is sort of all right. I'm thinking of around about the moment where Christopher Lee steps up his game in terms of trying to get hold of the nun. He comes up with this cool trick involving a snake around this guy's arm. and all the moments involving mind control of the nun are all right. You know, we get one really grisly murder in an apartment, but it's slim pickings for the most part. I didn't enjoy this film, and given that we had Legends of the Seven Golden Vampires just a few reviews ago, this is a really dodgy end to this review series. Really makes me think that if Hammer hadn't wrapped up at this point and they'd have gone on into the 80s, would we have had a whole procession of really dodgy movies like this where Hammer just couldn't find themselves again, or would they have been able to course correct eventually and get back to doing, you know, proper content again? But this one, really not for me. I'll quickly show you the version of the film that I bought for it. So here is my Blu-ray disc of To the Devil a Daughter. I really regret buying the Blu-ray. It cost me £13. Oh, I could have had a DVD for about £7 as well, but I thought this one would be good, but completely wrong about that. I've got a pile of DVDs and Blu-rays that are Hammer films that I will just never watch again. There's probably about 14, 15 films in that pile. This will be getting added to that, and at the other end of the scale, I've got maybe 40 to 50 Hammer films on this one shelf that I've got, which I will absolutely go back to. So I've definitely got way more good ones than bad ones, but sadly, I'm going to have to add this film to the bad pile. So let's get to the Bag of Terror, and I'll show you the score for this one. That's all we've got, I'm afraid. 1 bloody axe out of 5. Definitely one of the poorer Hammer films I've seen. So there we have it. We'll go to one last picture, and then I will say a few words about the end of this review series and also what is going to be coming next in the next 2 videos. So I finally reached the end of my Hammer review series. I started this about 3 years ago, I think, and I've covered maybe 70 films in that time. I've covered a lot of stuff to do with Hammer. I think at some point I went through the entire filmography with a pen and paper nearby and literally wrote down all the films that I wanted to watch and review, and there were loads of films on that list that I just wasn't interested in, mainly comedies, a lot of the early black and white ones, a lot of the more recent ones as well, just not really interested in watching. I've seen all the ones that I want to watch, and I think now is a good time to finish and move on to something else, which will be Amicus. But I'm not done with Hammer yet. I have still got my ranking to come. So originally I was contemplating doing a mammoth top 100 Hammer rankings, but I think I've only seen something in the region of 85 films. I've reviewed maybe 70 of those 85, roughly. I'm only being rough with the numbers here. But if I was going to do a top 100 ranking, I would have had to have hunted out another 15 movies to watch just for the sake of that ranking, movies that I'm not really that interested in watching. So instead of doing that, I've decided to do a top 50. So that's what I'm going to do. So the next 2 videos after this are going to be my Hammer ranking. The first video I'm going to go from 50 to 26, and then the second video I will go from 25 to 1. And I think for the most part, those 50 films are going to be films that I really, really like. So films like To the Devil a Daughter are not going to make it in. Legends of the Seven Golden Vampires from the other week, that's not going to make it in as well. But those are the last couple of clues that I'll give in terms of what is going to make it in and what won't. And I guess nothing else need be said. I'll be back very, very soon to do that ranking. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.